You what? The human general's voice cut through the ornate chamber like a plasma blade through butter. Her weathered features remained perfectly stoic, but anyone who'd spent more than 5 minutes around humans could read the dangerous gleam in her eyes. The Vaklexi representative, all 7 feet of iridescent scales and ceremonial robes, had the decency to look uncomfortable. Well, as uncomfortable as a being with no facial muscles could manage. The slight ripple in their throat membranes spoke volumes. We merely conducted a standard civilizational assessment, the Vaklexi explained, their translator rendering the clicks and whistles into crisp galactic standard. As per Council Protocol 7249B, Section 12, Paragraph, you dropped asteroids on Chicago. The chamber erupted in murmurs. The human general, officially Earth's first representative to the Galactic Council, stood perfectly still at the podium. Her dress uniform, adorned with campaign ribbons that no other species could yet decode, seemed to absorb the light from the chamber's floating illumination spheres. The council speaker, a gaseous entity contained within an ornate hovering vessel, pulsed in what the other races had learned to interpret as confusion. Surely there is some misunderstanding. The Vaklexi Evaluation Corps is known throughout the galaxy for their precise and non-intrusive assessment methods. Oh, there's no misunderstanding, the general replied, pulling out what appeared to be an antiquated paper folder. The sight of processed tree pulp caused several of the more technologically advanced species to shudder. I have here the complete record of what your evaluation looked like from our perspective. Would you like to see the casualty reports first, or should we start with the property damage? The Vaklexi representative's scales shifted to a deeper shade of purple. With all due respect, General, your species was barely at Class 3 technological development. Our standard procedures for... We shot down 6 of your ships. Silence fell across the chamber like a heavy blanket. Even the perpetually vibrating quantum consciousness delegates stopped their usual oscillation. The general continued, her voice carrying the same casual tone one might use to discuss the weather. You came in with what I assume you thought was overwhelming force. 12 ships, right? State-of-the-art Vaklexi military vessels? She paused, allowing a small smile to cross her face. We took out half your fleet with technology you deemed primitive. Would anyone care to explain how that fits into your assessment metrics? The council speaker's containment vessel swirled with agitated patterns. General, please understand. This is unprecedented. No Class 3 civilization has ever... Oh, I'm not finished, the general interrupted, pulling another paper from her folder. See, what I find really interesting is what happened after we knocked those ships out of the sky. Your evacuation protocols were impressive, I'll grant you that. But you left something behind. She held up what appeared to be a photograph. Specifically, you left behind Lieutenant First Class ZXVK of the Vaklexi Evaluation Corps. Would you like to know what happened next? The Vaklexi representative's scales had now shifted to an almost white shade, a sign of extreme distress that even humans could recognize. See, Lieutenant ZXVK was injured in the crash. Broken thoracic ridge, ruptured breathing sacs, nasty business all around. And you know what those primitive humans did when they found an injured alien who'd just participated in an attack on their planet? The chamber held its collective breath, or equivalent respiratory function. They took him to a hospital, figured out his biology on the fly, saved his life. The general's smile grew slightly wider. He's actually become quite the celebrity, currently teaching xenobiology at Johns Hopkins University. Has a particular fondness for human pizza, though his doctors keep telling him to cut back on the cheese. The council speaker's containment vessel rippled with what might have been amusement. General, are you suggesting that your species provided medical care to an enemy combatant using completely unfamiliar biological parameters? Oh, that's not the best part, the general continued, clearly warming to her topic. The best part is what happened when he was well enough to talk. See, that's when we learned about this whole civilizational assessment business, and about the Galactic Council, and about the fact that there were roughly 50 different spacefaring species out there who might decide to drop by Earth for their own assessments. She pulled out another sheet of paper. Would anyone like to guess how long it took us to reverse engineer the Vaklexi ship's faster-than-light drive? The chamber erupted in shocked exclamations. The Vaklexi representative looked like they might faint. 3 months. The general announced cheerfully. Turns out having a cooperative alien engineer who's grateful for saving his life, and who really, really likes pizza, speeds up the process considerably. The weapon systems took a bit longer, about 6 months. The shield technology was tricky, but we had that figured out before the year was up. She closed her folder with a decisive snap. So, here's the situation. Earth is now capable of faster-than-light travel. We have shield technology that can handle anything up to a Class 7 civilization's standard armaments. We've got weapons that made your evaluation fleet look like toys. And most importantly, her voice took on an edge that made several delegates lean back in their seats. We are really, really good at learning from our mistakes. The general straightened her uniform jacket. So, here's my proposal. Earth would like to join the Galactic Council. We bring with us significant technological innovations, a unique perspective on problem-solving, and some really excellent pizza recipes. In return, we'd like a formal agreement that no more civilizational assessments will be conducted on emerging species without their explicit consent and participation. The council speaker's vessel swirled with complex patterns. And if we decline? Oh, we'll still join the galactic community, the general replied with a shrug. We'll just do it our way. And trust me, you don't want us doing it our way. We tend to get a bit creative when we're working without guidelines. The chamber burst into chaos as dozens of species tried to speak at once. The general stood calmly at her podium, watching the scene with the patient expression of someone who knew they held all the cards. The council speaker eventually restored order. General, your proposal is unprecedented. The civilizational assessment system has been in place for over 10,000 years. And in those 10,000 years, how many species have you lost because they weren't ready? The general countered. How many potential allies and friends have you written off because they didn't fit your predetermined metrics? Because let me tell you something about humans. We're really good at not fitting into boxes. She gestured to the Vaklexi representative. Just ask our friend here. They came to test us, and instead, we turned one of their officers into a pizza-loving professor who writes academic papers about human medical innovations. We took their attack and turned it into a cultural exchange program. That's what humans do. We adapt, we improvise, and we turn enemies into friends whenever possible. She paused. Unless you keep being enemies, then we get creative in less friendly ways. The council speaker's vessel displayed patterns that suggested deep thought. Your species is unusual, General. Thank you, she replied with a grin. We try. The council will need time to deliberate on your proposal. Of course, the general agreed amenably. Take all the time you need. In the meantime, I've brought samples of what Lieutenant Zex VK calls the supreme pizza of supreme pizzas for anyone who's interested in a taste of Earth cuisine. I believe the biochemical analysis suggests it's safe for consumption by roughly 80% of council species. The chamber erupted again, but this time with a very different energy. Several delegates were already making their way toward the Earth delegation section, their curiosity about this mysterious pizza overwhelming their diplomatic reserve. The general watched with satisfaction as the Vaklexi representative cautiously approached the Earth delegation's table, drawn by the familiar aroma. Ah, Ambassador, she called out. Lieutenant ZXVK asked me to bring you his special recommendation. Extra cheese, hold the pepperoni. He thought it might help our negotiations proceed more smoothly. As the Vaklexi ambassador accepted the offered delicacy with trembling appendages, the general allowed herself a moment of reflection. Earth's first official contact with alien life had begun with an attack and ended with a pizza party. Somehow that felt perfectly human. In the following weeks, the Galactic Council would ratify Earth's membership in record time. They would also, coincidentally, pass sweeping reforms to the civilizational assessment protocols. And if anyone noticed that the council cafeteria suddenly started serving pizza, well, that was purely coincidental. The general's final report to Earth's leadership was succinct. Mission accomplished. Sent pizza. Saved galaxy. The usual. Some said it was the shortest and most accurate diplomatic report in human history. With all due respect, General, you can't just open a pizza restaurant in the council chamber's diplomatic sector. The human general looked up from her datapad, where she'd been reviewing the latest franchise applications. Actually, according to Section 47, subsection C of the newly ratified Earth Council Trade Agreement, we can open cultural exchange establishments in any diplomatic zone. She smiled sweetly. Would you like to see the paperwork? The council's chief administrator, a towering crystalline being whose facets flickered with agitation, managed to convey extreme exasperation despite lacking any conventional facial features. That provision was meant for educational institutions and artistic venues. Cooking is an art form, the general replied serenely. Just ask the Gastro-Consciousness Collective of Betelgeuse. They've already pre-ordered 50 franchise locations. The administrator's crystals chimed in distress. The gastro-consciousness hasn't made a single decision in 3 centuries. They spend all their time debating the perfect ratio of elements in their nutrient solutions. Apparently they found our marinara sauce recipe quite convincing. The general tapped her datapad. They're particularly excited about something they're calling the Great Pizza Consciousness Expansion Project. Before the administrator could respond, a familiar Vaklishi burst into the office, their scales shimmering with excitement. "General, you have to help us. It's a disaster." The general was on her feet immediately, years of military training kicking in. "What's wrong, Lieutenant XVK? Another unauthorized assessment? Rogue planet? Death Star?" "Worse." XVK's translator struggled to keep up with their agitated clicks and whistles. "The students in my xenobiology class have discovered something called food trucks. And now they're demanding we implement a similar system in the Council's transportation network." The general slowly sat back down. "I'm not seeing the disaster part, Lieutenant. They want to create mobile pizza delivery platforms that can traverse quantum space." XVK's scales were cycling through colors faster than a malfunctioning RGB gaming setup. "Do you have any idea what the Council's Transportation Safety Board will say about that?" "Actually," the administrator interjected, their crystals pulsing with resignation, "the Transportation Safety Board has already approved the concept. Something about innovative solutions to cross-dimensional hunger satisfaction." The general's grin widened. "See, the system works." "The system is being corrupted by cheese and tomato sauce," the administrator protested weakly. "Corrupted?" The general raised an eyebrow. "Or improved. Because I've noticed that since we introduced pizza to the council cafeteria, interdepartmental cooperation has increased by 47%. The quantum consciousness delegates actually sat through an entire meeting last week without once diverging into parallel probability streams." "They were too busy eating stuffed crust," the administrator muttered. "Exactly. And when was the last time we had a species try to pull a surprise civilizational assessment on anyone?" The administrator's crystals dimmed slightly. "Not since the Thoraxians tried to evaluate that pre-FTL civilization in the Carina Nebula." "And what happened then?" "The Earth observation team that was already there invited them to lunch," the administrator admitted. "By the time dessert was served, they'd drafted a joint cultural exchange program instead, with pizza as a key component of the exchange curriculum," ZXVK added helpfully. "My colleague in the Thoraxian Science Academy says their students have never been more motivated to study human biochemistry. They're determined to develop a way to safely consume dairy products." The general leaned back in her chair, the picture of satisfaction. "So what you're both telling me is that Earth's cultural exchange establishments are actually promoting peace, cooperation, and scientific advancement throughout the galaxy." The administrator's crystals chimed in what might have been surrender. "The Council's Efficiency Board reports that meetings with provided pizza have a 73% higher resolution rate and a 91% decrease in calls for ritual combat." "Which reminds me," the general said, checking her datapad again. "The warrior clans of Rigel 7 have requested permission to open what they're calling a combat pizzeria. Apparently they want to combine traditional honor duels with table service." ZXVK's scales shifted to a curious shade of chartreuse. "How would that even work?" "They're still working out the details, but I believe the current plan involves servers trained in both hand-to-hand combat and proper pizza tossing techniques. They're calling it slice or die." The administrator somehow managed to slump while remaining perfectly crystalline. This is not what the founders of the Galactic Council had in mind when they established the protocols for interspecies cooperation. "No," the general agreed cheerfully. "They probably thought it would be all formal treaties and diplomatic protocols. Instead, they got pizza franchises and quantum food trucks. But you know what? It's working. Species that haven't talked to each other in millennia are sitting down at the same table. The Vaklixi and the Thoraxians are collaborating on xenobiological research instead of arguing about assessment protocols. Even the warrior clans are channeling their combat traditions into customer service." She stood up and walked to the window, gesturing at the bustling diplomatic sector below. "Look out there. What do you see?" The administrator and ZXVK joined her at the window. Below, beings of all shapes, sizes, and phase states were moving through the plaza. At the center, a newly installed outdoor seating area was filled with mixed species groups, all sharing what were unmistakably pizzas. "I see chaos," the administrator said, but their tone lacked conviction. "I see connection," the general corrected gently. "Every slice shared is a small piece of understanding. Every new franchise is a bridge between cultures. And yes, maybe it's not the most dignified form of diplomacy, but tell me, when was the last time we had a serious diplomatic incident in the council? The administrator's crystals pulsed thoughtfully. Not since the pizza parlor opened. Exactly. The general turned back to her desk and picked up her data pad again. Now, about those quantum food trucks. I think we should start with a pilot program in the diplomatic sector. Lieutenant XVK, how would you feel about overseeing the project? Your experience with both Vacluxy space travel technology and Earth cuisine makes you uniquely qualified. ZXVK's scales shifted to a proud purple. I would be honored, General, and I've been working on some ideas for quantum-stable delivery boxes. Excellent. And Administrator, we'll need your help coordinating with the various council departments. I understand the Efficiency Board has some concerns about the possibility of pizzas arriving before they're ordered due to temporal displacement. The Administrator chimed resignedly. I'll convene a task force, with pizza provided, of course. Of course. The General smiled. After all, that's how Earth does diplomacy now. One slice at a time. As they began discussing the logistics of faster-than-light food delivery, none of them noticed the small group of observers at the far end of the plaza. The observers, representatives of a highly advanced civilization that had been watching Earth's integration into the galactic community with great interest, turned to each other with expressions of bewilderment. They conquered the council, one whispered, not with weapons or technology or political maneuvering, but with flat bread covered in sauce and cheese. Should we be worried? Another asked. They watched as a Vacluxy diplomat shared a pizza with a quantum consciousness delegate, the latter somehow managing to consume their slices across multiple probability streams simultaneously. No, the first observer decided, but perhaps we should learn to make pizza just in case. In her office, the general felt a sudden urge to look out the window again. The plaza was still full of diverse beings sharing meals together, and she smiled. Earth's second diplomatic report to its leadership would be slightly longer than the first. Pizza operations expanding. Galaxy continuing to improve. Quantum food delivery and development. Send more cheese. It was perhaps not the way anyone had expected galactic peace to be achieved, but as humans had known for centuries, the best negotiations had always happened over good food and shared tables. Even if those tables sometimes existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. We have a situation, General. The human general looked up from what appeared to be an ancient Earth artifact, a paper notebook where she was sketching pizza topping combinations, to find the council's chief administrator's crystalline form vibrating with unusual intensity. Define situation, she replied, carefully closing her notebook. Are we talking someone tried to put pineapple on a Regellian warrior's pizza situation, or actual galactic crisis situation? The ascended consciousness of Proxima Centauri has filed a formal complaint. Ah. The general leaned back. And what exactly are the beings of pure energy and thought complaining about? The administrator's crystals flickered in what had become recognizable as embarrassment. They claim that the quantum food trucks are disrupting their collective meditation streams. How so? Apparently, the smell of pizza is so appealing that it's causing their consciousness to manifest in physical form just to eat it. They're calling it a violation of their transcendent nature. The general pinched the bridge of her nose. Let me get this straight. Beings that voluntarily abandoned their physical forms eons ago to become pure energy are upset because our pizza is so good it's giving them temporary bodies? Essentially, yes. The administrator paused. They're particularly upset about the garlic knots. Before the general could respond, Lieutenant XVK burst into the office, their scales a riot of emergency colors. General! The Warrior Clan's Combat Pizzeria has challenged the Quantum Food Truck Division to a delivery duel. The general didn't even blink. Standard delivery duel or quantum shifted? Both! Simultaneously! They're calling it Schrodinger's Special Delivery. The administrator's crystals chimed in alarm. That's impossible. You can't have a simultaneous standard and quantum shifted delivery duel. The paperwork alone would... They were interrupted by a new arrival. A shimmering cloud of light that materialized in the office, gradually taking the form of what appeared to be a very embarrassed Proximan energy being. The being said, its voice resonating on multiple frequencies. Is this where we file paperwork for temporary physical manifestation permits? The quantum food truck outside is offering something called extra cheese breadsticks, and we, that is, the collective, would like to try them. For research purposes, of course. The general managed to keep a straight face. Of course. Administrator, please direct our transcendent friend to the proper forms. Lieutenant, tell the Combat Pizzeria and the Quantum Division that no delivery duels are authorized without proper interdimensional insurance coverage. She paused. And make sure they know that if they're going to do it anyway, I want video footage. As the administrator led the embarrassed energy being away, and Zex VK hurried off to manage the impending delivery duel crisis, the general's datapad chimed with a priority message. Her eyebrows rose as she read it. Well, she muttered, that's interesting. 10 minutes later, she was addressing an emergency session of the Council's inner circle. The floating illumination spheres seemed dimmer than usual, casting dramatic shadows across the chamber. Members of the circle, she began. We have received intelligence that suggests a group of traditionalist elements within the Council has been less than pleased with recent changes to our organizational culture. The Va-Klexi ambassador, who had recently begun wearing an Earth-style chef's hat above their ceremonial robes, leaned forward. You mean the Pizza Liberation Front? The chamber erupted in whispers. The general raised an eyebrow. The what now? A radical group dedicated to returning the Council to its pre-pizza bureaucratic purity, the ambassador explained, their scales rippling with distaste. They believe that the introduction of Earth cuisine has made the Council too efficient. Too efficient? They argue that the reduced time spent in meetings, the increased rate of peaceful conflict resolution, and the general atmosphere of cooperation are undermining thousands of years of carefully cultivated bureaucratic tradition. The ambassador's scales shifted to a color that humans had learned to associate with amusement. They're particularly upset about the decline in ritual combat challenges during budget meetings. The general rubbed her temples. So let me make sure I understand this correctly. We have energy beings demanding physical forms to eat pizza, quantum physics being applied to delivery services, warrior clans transforming combat into customer service. And now we have bureaucrats protesting because everything is working too well? Actually, a new voice chimed in. It's even more complicated than that. All eyes turned to the chamber entrance, where a figure stood in the shadows. As they stepped into the light, several council members gasped. It was another human, wearing what appeared to be a food service uniform decorated with military-style medals. Commander Reyes, Earth Intelligence Division, Culinary Operations Section. She introduced herself. We've been tracking the Pizza Liberation Front's activities. They're not just protesting. They're planning something big. Something that could threaten the very foundation of our new galactic order. The general's eyes narrowed. What exactly are they planning? They're developing... Commander Reyes paused for dramatic effect. Anti-pizza technology. The chamber erupted in chaos. The Va-Klexi ambassador's scales turned pure white with horror. Even the administrator's crystals seemed to dim. What kind of anti-pizza technology? The general asked, her voice cutting through the pandemonium. Our sources indicate they're working on a quantum-based formula designed to make any pizza taste like bland nutrient paste, regardless of toppings or preparation method. They're calling it Project Flavor Nullifier. The general stood slowly, her expression reminiscent of the day she first addressed the council about Earth's assessment. So, she said quietly, they've chosen to escalate this to an actual crisis. She turned to address the chamber. Members of the council, we stand at a crossroads. This isn't just about pizza anymore. It's about everything the new galactic order represents. Cooperation, innovation, the freedom to enjoy garlic knots regardless of your current state of physical manifestation. The Proximan energy being, still in physical form and clutching a half-eaten breadstick, pulsed in agreement. I move that we establish an immediate task force to address this threat, the general continued. We'll need our best minds, quantum physicists, culinary experts, warriors skilled in both combat and customer service, and, she smiled slightly, perhaps a few beings who understand the value of good pizza. The Va-Klexi ambassador raised an appendage. I nominate Lieutenant ZXVK to lead the scientific division. Their unique expertise in both xenobiology and pizza dynamics makes them uniquely qualified. Seconded, came a chorus of voices. The general nodded. Very well. Commander Reyes will coordinate with Earth Intelligence. And I want the Warrior Clan's Combat Pizzeria on standby. If the Pizza Liberation Front wants a war on flavor, we'll show them why Earth was never a species to be underestimated. As the council members dispersed to begin preparations, the general turned to Commander Reyes. Get me a direct line to Earth. Tell them to send everything, our best chefs, our finest ingredients, and... Her eyes gleamed with determination. The secret recipes. The secret recipes? Reyes whispered, awed. You don't mean... Yes, Commander. It's time to unveil the Chicago Deep Dish Protocols. The war for the galaxy's flavor was about to begin, and Earth was ready to fight it the only way they knew how, one slice at a time. The general stared at the holographic display, watching as red dots indicating Pizza Liberation Front activities spread across the galactic map like a bureaucratic plague. They've hit another quantum food truck hub, Commander Reyes reported grimly. Total flavor nullification. Even the emergency garlic butter couldn't save the breadsticks. Lieutenant ZXVK, their scales a mournful gray, held up a slice of the affected pizza. It drooped sadly, emanating an aura of pure mediocrity. The quantum-based formula is evolving. This was once a 4-cheese supreme with extra pepperoni. Now it tastes like standard-issue council cafeteria food circa 10,000 years ago. The administrator finished, their crystals dim with horror. The general's jaw tightened. Casualties? 3 warrior clan delivery specialists have requested immediate meditation leave, Reyes said. The quantum consciousness delegates who witnessed the attack split into so many probability streams of disgust that we're still trying to reintegrate them. And, she hesitated, we lost 2 proximate energy beings. Lost as in? They were so appalled by the flavor nullification that they immediately reascended to pure energy form and are refusing to rematerialize until we can guarantee pizza safety. The general slammed her fist on the table. This ends now, Commander. Is the package from Earth secure? Reyes nodded, gesturing to a heavily shielded container in the corner. The security system surrounding it made a Vaclixi battlecruiser look like a child's toy. The Chicago Deep Dish Protocols arrived an hour ago. Full security detail, quantum encrypted recipe database, and... She lowered her voice. The special ingredient. Special ingredient? XVK's scales shifted to a curious purple. My great-grandmother's secret sauce recipe, the general said solemnly. It's been in my family for 6 generations. The Pizza Liberation Front may have their quantum flavor nullifiers, but they've never encountered anything like this. The administrator's crystals pulsed with concern. General, are you suggesting we escalate to grandmother-level recipes? The Council has strict regulations about deploying family culinary secrets in times of crisis. This is why Earth never signed that particular treaty, the general replied with a grim smile. She turned to the assembled team. Here's the plan. The combat pizzeria warriors will run interference, engaging PLF forces in traditional delivery duels to keep them distracted. Meanwhile, Lieutenant ZXVK's science team will synthesize a counter-agent to the flavor nullifier using the quantum properties of properly aged mozzarella. And the deep dish protocols? Reyes asked. That's where things get interesting. The general activated a secure holographic display, showing a complex series of blueprints. We're going to turn their own quantum technology against them. Every PLF attack creates a localized field of culinary blandness.